sweetheart, I wouldn't even bother with him. He's the moron.
Hello there. I know, it's crazy. I'm releasing a new video and it hasn't even been a whole calendar year.
Everybody stay calm! What's the procedure, everyone? Stay calm! Everybody calm down! Ideally,
I'd like to release these videos more often, but we all know how life always has other plans for us. Plus, I've just been so busy lately. There's a lot of great movies out at the moment, so I, once again, took to Instagram to see what the beautiful people there felt would be best to cover next. And to my pleasant surprise, the majority chose Monkey Man, with the First Omen losing by just a hair. Seeing that the results were a near tie, I thought, F it, I'll just cover both. I'm sure I won't regret this decision later, so let's just jump right into it. Monkey Man is the directorial debut of actor Dev Patel, most notably the star of films such as Slumdog Millionaire, Lion, and The Green Knight. It tells the story of Bobby, also played by Patel, a fighter who dons a monkey mask in an underground boxing ring, navigating and fighting his way through the criminal system to avenge a personal tragedy from his past. That's basically the gist of it before we really dive in. Now, I feel that there are a lot of people who either saw the trailer or the name of this film alone and thought, Monkey Man? That sounds dumb.
But guess what? You were all wrong!
Monkey Man is a film that doesn't just deliver on its hard-hitting premise, but also provides socio-political commentary, stunning visuals, and superb direction from Patel. You'd really be surprised to see that this is his first film, based on just how dense the entire presentation is. Now, I'm seeing a lot of comparisons to this in the John Wick franchise, to which I get, though I feel that Monkey Man has much more to offer, and that's coming from a John Wick lover. For starters, while John Wick is essentially 2/3 of highly choreographed and fast-paced action, Monkey Man instead opts to utilize a majority of the first two acts to really establish the world and its characters, delivering the action sequences a little more sparingly, at least for the first half or so. I've seen some criticism from others about this hurting the movie's pacing, but I feel that these are necessary details sewn into place about the state of India and Bobby's journey that are crucial to the story, and ultimately make for a more satisfying finale, which we'll get to. The visuals play a very strong and nuanced role during this time of the movie. While us, the audience, are in the dark about Bobby's past, Monkey Man chooses to drop visual clues of the story through these super up-close, intimate shots that are sometimes absolutely stunning and other times horrifying. And while it's used as a tool for subtle exposition, Patel also employs the cinematography for some heavily stylized and exciting camera work. He really makes the best of his art house background and lets his freak flag fly when the action is tense and the emotions need to be felt. Or when it needs to get a little weird, which it definitely does at times. So yeah, like I was saying before, the first act really just leaves a trail of breadcrumbs for the audience to kind of piece together what's going on, slowly but surely. Personally, I just always respect the decision to reveal what you're trying to convey through environmental elements instead of flat-out exposition delivered in ham-fisted dialogue.
They took everything from me, but now I'm the one who's doing the taking. I am Taker Man.
We'll jump into spoilers now. During a psychedelic-induced flashback sequence, it's revealed that Bobby's mother was brutally murdered at the hands of Rana Singh, a corrupt police chief under the command of Baba Shakti, a spiritual guru who ordered Bobby's village to be destroyed in order to require their land. When you made it to this point in the movie, you're able to piece together what happened thanks to the brief visual flashbacks, but it is until you, along with Bobby, come to terms with the sheer brutality of how it transpired that makes way for a very justified, blood-soaked third act. With this knowledge fresh in mind, Bobby, along with members of the Hijra community, aka the most badass trans women on the planet, infiltrate the Big Baddies nightclub and absolutely start going to town. I feel that Monkey Man waits till this blow off specifically to really showcase the awesome fight sequences. Instead of opting for heavy editing and fast cuts, Monkey Man, like John Wick, focuses on unbroken and detailed fight choreography. It's much more enjoyable to track and feel the impact of every single hit, especially with the full awareness of how evil the opposing side is. Hell, the scene even got me in a fighting mood, but then I remembered that I'm a candy ass who couldn't tie his shoes to the 3rd grade, so maybe I should leave the fighting to the big boys. Inevitably, Bobby succeeds in avenging his mother and the film ends with him collapsing from his injuries, yet completely at peace. I really enjoyed just about everything this movie had to offer. It was everything from interesting to exciting from start to finish. If I had any complaints, I feel that the movie could have spoken a little more on the growing authoritarian government and the religious extremism India is facing, though jamming too much into an already packed movie could have muddled the experience too. Also, there were times where the main villain, no, not evil Freddie Mercury, came off just a bit cartoonish with his characterization. I get that his godlike persona is intentional, but there were times where it just kind of took me out of the movie a little bit. Also, and this is a nitpick here, but I wish the movie showed more of Bobby's wounds after his fights. In one instance, we see him getting pummeled to the point where blood is visibly pouring through his mask, but the scene that immediately follows shows him in an elevator completely unblemished. I don't know if there was a time jump that I missed, but it seemed like a continuity issue. I also think that having his bruises and wounds on display would further exemplify the punishment he's willing to endure to achieve his revenge. But that's just me, and again, just a minor nitpick here. And if we really wanted to get obnoxious, I'm sure that there's someone out there that's like, well, if they're in India, why are they speaking English? Overall, this is a little budget movie with major blockbuster excitement that I strongly recommend to everyone. If you're looking for a refreshing action movie that's jam-packed and has a lot to say from beginning to end, then look no further than Monkey Man. Switching gears now to The Last Omen. This is another directorial debut from director Arkasha Stevenson. To be honest, I wasn't really familiar with her work before this movie. I believe she had a short film called Vessels, which came out in 2015. She had also directed episodes of Legion, Briar Patch, and Brand New Cherry Flavor. The First Omen takes place in the 1970s and tells the story of Margaret, an American novitiate who travels to Rome to begin her training and journey into the Catholic Church. It isn't long before Margaret discovers sinister happenings slowly coming to fold, culminating in what the church fears will be the impending birth of the Antichrist. Which is odd, because I recall my idiot brother Paul being born in 1998. Hollywood really loves to churn out legacy sequels and prequels and soft reboots like hotcakes, and seeing that this year's Exorcist Believer was, well...
It was horrible. Utterly horrible.
I was really on the fence of going into yet another installment in a franchise that's already had 3 sequels and a reboot under its belt. But after seeing it, I'm surprised and even a little relieved to say that, in my opinion, The Last Omen is pretty darn good. It doesn't break new ground by any means, and there are certainly aspects that I didn't enjoy, but mostly this film is very well made, with one of its greatest strengths being an eerie atmosphere maintained for a majority of the runtime, and I for one couldn't be more happy with that. It's no secret that the horror genre has an over-reliance on jump scares and gore to compensate for actual horror, but The First Omen, like its predecessor, has a much more methodical and atmospheric pace, and if there's anything I don't mind that this film parallels the original Omen with, it's this. I think I counted only a handful of jump scares, and wouldn't you know it, when you're not anticipating being shocked out of your seat every 5 minutes, the scares are actually surprising and creepy. There's some great cinematography that really adds to the threatening and ominous feel of the setting, and in many instances utilized to accent the isolation and fear Margaret feels as she slowly loosens the grip on her sanity. The performance of Margaret was delivered excellently by actress Nell Tiger-Free, most notable for playing Marcella in Game of Thrones. The innocent and sweet charm from her character in that show largely carries over to this movie, with Margaret often having a meek, pure aura to her, though that isn't to say that she's a one-trick pony either. There are plenty of examples that show a wide range of emotion from feel here, from the previously mentioned more timid presence to bizarre, almost animal-like behavior, with each case having you feel either the warmth from her caring demeanor, to uncomfortable and distressed as the evil forces at play become more and more apparent. More than anything though, what really stuck out and disturbed me the most was the upsetting punishment of the young women in this movie, specifically shown through some uncomfortable birthing imagery. Without really going into detail, there are some very unpleasant up-close shots that show these very young women going from frenzied to almost catatonic states. It isn't pleasant to sit through, but that's the point. With our current political climate, I believe it's no secret that there's something to be said about bodily autonomy here. If there's anything you should take away from The First Omen, it's what it has to say on the systemic control over women's bodies. Up until this point, a little more than halfway through the movie, I was very on board with the presentation. Now let's move on to what I felt were some of the weaknesses of the movie. I actually took some issue with the execution of the on-screen deaths. I spoke before on how the film benefited from the parallels of the first, but here it kind of takes a turn for the worst. Every major on-screen kill featured in this film is just a variation of the major kills from the original movie. Difference here is they modify them for a more gory effect, which in a way feels like a betrayal of the tone that this film painstakingly curates. I think one of the most egregious examples of this is a redux of probably the most iconic death of the original film, its hanging scene. The setup was simple, but the payoff was unnerving and unsettling. Here this movie does the exact same thing, right down to the "it's all for you!" But instead the character just sets herself on fire. Maybe I'm just being cynical here, but this just feels lazy and a contrived way to up the ante for the sake of it, and almost insults the audience with gratuitous violence in a movie that doesn't really need it. The other issue these deaths pose is when you borrow elements of the original with drawn out setups to the kill, it then eliminates any sort of suspense that you might feel since you already know what's about to happen, and I don't feel that the changes, made purely to subvert those expectations, were worth it. They weren't more shocking or memorable, just forced. Another downside of this is if someone does choose to watch this movie prior to the original, it virtually has the same effect to that movie now. It's just a lose-lose scenario that I feel could have been avoided had they just came up with original kills instead. And since we're on the film's big weaknesses, let's talk about that ending. For me, it was near impossible to avoid spoilers about the birthing scenes, seeing that it's literally the first thing people mention when talking about this movie. Contrary to my aforementioned feelings on gore in this movie, my gripe doesn't quite come with this scene. I actually felt that the cutaways during the C-section made the whole thing more acceptable than what could have been. Granted, I found out soon after watching this movie that to avoid an NC-17 rating, they chose to go with the cutaways instead of one continuous take, but the sentiment still stands. Nope, my problem is what came directly right after the birth. When Margaret gives birth to Damien, oh yeah, by the way, this probably isn't too shocking, but Margaret is the Omen's mom. You can hear a baby crying, though Damien isn't making a noise. My dumbass thought it was just the ADR at first, like, damn, this baby isn't crying at all, and they piped in those cries anyway. They don't give a shit. No, it turns out when the camera pans up from Damien, it's revealed he has a twin sister.
Sister. So, you have a twin sister.
I don't particularly mind twists. A good one can have you reevaluating an entire movie. What bothers me about this one is the grimy implication that comes with this reveal. Prior to the First Omen, there's absolutely no mention of Damien having a sister in any of the other Omen sequels. So I feel that this reveal is just another studio mandated choice to keep the franchise alive for God knows how many sequels after this, instead of just letting the story end in an organic way. The ending could have been devastating, having Margaret succumb to her wounds and have the story play out like a tragedy. Instead, she somehow survives a horrific birthing process without any immediate medical attention, a stabbing, and escapes a burning building unscathed. It's then revealed that years later she's alive with her daughter and fellow former novitiate, Carlita, hiding away in the mountains. It isn't that I wanted Margaret to die, quite the opposite. I thought her character was a beacon of hope, which is why her unfortunate death would have felt far more bleak and emphatic to the notion that this is not a happy movie. I could have been left with the same sense of dread that the original Omen left me with, knowing that, in this story, evil has won. I mean, guys, this is a movie about the freaking Antichrist. No, not him. Him. So not only does the ending reek of corporate greed, it just devolves into over-the-top nonsense that I feel isn't really representative of the entire movie. Because despite me talking pretty negatively about the deaths and ending, I still very much enjoyed this movie. A bad ending doesn't negate the good that came before it. This is still a solid movie with a great leading performance, strong poignant themes, and a creepiness that lingers. I just feel that it made a few poor choices and derailed near the end there. But I'm probably in the minority here. I know you guys live for the carnage, so if you get something out of the kills in the finale, more power to you. If you're a film buff, I recommend this one, but if you're more of a casual moviegoer, this might not be the one for you. But I think that'll just about do it for this video. If you made it to this point, thank you so much. Seriously. I love you. Too much? I like you. Speaking of, feel free to like this video if you enjoyed it. Please consider sharing and subscribing if you're feeling so kind. It really helps me out. And that's about it. Thanks, guys. Take care of yourselves. And seeing that this... oh, wow. Seeing that was a big burp. Oh, damn.